Welcome to the first event in our Development 2030 webinar series. We're delighted to welcome so many of you to this very important session, Achieving the UN SDGs, How has the pandemic impacted our progress? For those of you who don't know much about us, we are ADEX and Development 2030, two events that are scheduled to take place every year in Brussels and which will be providing the platform for today's webinar. ADEX focuses on humanitarian aid and disaster relief, whilst Development 2030 is concerned with the UN SDGs and international development. Development 2030 is a new launch, while 2021 sees the 10th ADEX in Brussels. We've also held ADEX 6 times in Nairobi and once in Dakar in Bangladesh. ADEX and Development 2030 are part of Montgomery Group, the global events company with over a century of experience serving our communities and delivering first-class events across a variety of sectors and continents, from art and food to humanitarian aid, to name but a few. I'm Nicholas Rutherford, Event Director for ADEX and Development 2030, and I'd like to start by introducing our session. Achieving the SDGs in the face of reduced funding has become a challenge that requires collective action in both policymaking and implementation. The global labour market has experienced massive unemployment and growing inequities that have resulted in the slowing of economic growth across the world. In this webinar, we will approach this topic from a global perspective and discuss how the pandemic has impacted our progress in achieving the UN SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, the UN SDG 9, infrastructure and innovation, and the UN SDG 10, reducing inequalities, and discuss some approaches to finding solutions. Today's webinar will last approximately 50 minutes, followed by another 10 minutes for questions. Please feel free to click the questions button at the bottom of your screen to add any questions you may have after this presentation, and our panelists can answer at the end of their presentations and discussion. Also, can the audience hover over the screen and in the bottom right corner, click on the cog and switch from HD to 360p, which will improve the experience and decrease bandwidth for us all. Now it gives me great pleasure to start our webinar by handing over to our moderator, Dr. Renuma Karim, founder and CEO of Heroes for All New York. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for giving us the platform to discuss this very important topic, as we are, it's 9 years we left to approach towards achieving our SDG goals. But good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to everybody who's joining us from different parts of the world. Today, we have an esteemed panel, and before I give a short introduction on what SDG, many of you might be still not familiar with the topic, but I want to first introduce our esteemed panel. We have with us, among us, Mr. Asif Ibrahim. He's the former president of Dhaka Chambers of Commerce and also the current president of the Chittagong Stock Exchange, current chairperson of the Chittagong Stock Exchange. He's also the first chairman of business initiative Leading Development, BUILD, a private public dialogue platform to enable policy reforms for an improved investment climate in Bangladesh. Mr. Ibrahim is also a member of the Executive Council of UNESCAP, Sustainable Business Network, and chairman of the ESBN Task Force on Disaster and Climate Risk Reduction. He is also a board of advisor of BRAC Business School under BRAC University and a core committee member of the Citizens Platform for SFGs Bangladesh, representing the private sector. There are so many accomplishments under Asif, Mr. Asif Ibrahim, Dr. Nazneen Ahmed, and Omar Farooq. So I'm just going to give a brief, and you can find the details in our website of Development 2030. Dr. Nazneen Ahmed, it's a pleasure to have you on board. Dr. Nazneen Ahmed is the country economist of UNDP. Before joining UNDP, she worked at Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, BIDS, as a senior research fellow. She has nearly 24 years of research experience in development economics, focusing on macroeconomic management, inclusive growth, international trade industry, private sector, SME development, labor rights, and gender issues. Dr. Nazneen has been involved in resource planning and budget formulation for Bangladesh for about a decade, and she was a member of the panel of economists to adopt the 7th five-year plan of Bangladesh, and one of the authors of the upcoming National Human Development Report of Bangladesh. And finally, Omar Farooq, Mr. Omar Farooq, he is the regional specialist, climate specialist working with forest-based action and climate services at one of the UN organization overseeing the MENA region. He has more than 16 years of experience working specifically in private sector engagement, disaster and climate risk management, and humanitarian response in South Asia. He also worked with DFID as a humanitarian advisor. Omar is also one of the Heroes for All board members since its inception and providing advices in different strategic direction. So thank you so much, and I welcome you all to this session to talk about SDG goals. As we are moving forward with the SDGs to achieve SDGs in the 2030, I will just share the screen for a brief 1 minute to give our audience an overview of what we are going to talk about. So if it's okay, I'm just sharing the screen briefly. Okay. Can you see the screen now, everybody? Or is it still okay? So today we are talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, 9 years away from achieving. And it is the 17 goals. It's a spin-off from the MDG goals, which started in 2000. There were 8 goals, and now in 2015, there were 2 committees that were formed to discuss that the 8 goals are not enough. So they have expanded it to 17 goals. One of the important distinction between the MDGs and SDGs was the MDGs mostly dealt with developing countries, but SDG brought everybody on the table. So it's a framework where we are all working together to achieve the 17 goals by 2030 as a whole world, not just specific country. And when it ends, definitely there will be more goals in 2030. We will be creating more goals. But as we are moving forward, these are the 3 core areas in which those 17 goals are based on: the environment, the society, and the economy. And you can see in this diagram how all these goals are separated in layers. And during this pandemic, we can see that we are all inclusive. We cannot neglect one goal for another. If the environment is unstable, everything, our economy, our society, our community, everything falls. So everything is interrelated, and that's what we are going to talk about and see how we can come up with some solution in a collaborative way. So my first question, I'm moving forward with the question answer sessions now. So my first question, general question to all of you, and I will start it with Dr. Nazneen. In what ways, now you can see that there are so many changes that are happening all over the world. And for our global audience, could you just give us a little bit idea of all of you on how you are directly or indirectly involved with this SDG process through your work?
Good evening from Bangladesh to everyone, and thanks for inviting me to this important webinar. And I'm very glad to share some of my experiences of working. And to answer your question, actually, as you have already mentioned, that I have joined UNDP recently as the country economist in Bangladesh, and I'm directly involved with many activities that UNDP Bangladesh is conducting, which are directly linked to achievement of SDG goals. So we have from UNDP side, we have different programs that I can discuss at a later stage of this webinar. And for that, I give economic inputs on them and overseeing the monitoring. And because I'm part of the senior management team, so I'm whatever UNDP is doing in Bangladesh, those which are directly linked to SDG achievement, I'm part of that. So and I would like to say that not only because I'm UNDP, I'm linked to SDG achievement activities. My prior activity, my prior research, when I was a researcher with the Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, one of my some of my key research areas that included industry, labor, employment, and all these things are very important goals from SDG, and when we are moving, want to achieve leaving no one behind. So in that way, I think from my research experience, and now I'm with the implementation, with an implementation agency. So I am both have the theoretical knowledge, and now I'm more on the practical ground. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Asif Ibrahim, could you share your relationship with the SDG process?
Again, welcome from Bangladesh, and thank you for inviting me. The business community has to play a very crucial role, as was determined at the very beginning, because of the huge financing requirement that's there for the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals, and the goals which relate directly to economic development, reducing inequalities, and particular 8 and 12. For those, it's very important that businesses engage themselves. And from the very beginning, when these goals were announced, we all know that the UN Global Compact, that network was established, and businesses took part in that network. And apart from that, there has also been other networks like the Global Investors for Sustainable Development, the GISD Alliance, which has been, they have made commitment for investing in the SDGs and reinforcing SDG actions in their portfolios. Many of the companies now require SDG assessment for their business, and also to develop a response strategy. There has been a study done by KPMG in 2018, and that said that 84% of top companies in the world have actually identified SDGs as most relevant for their business. So you can clearly see that the business community has to play a very significant, has been trying to play a very significant role in Bangladesh. I'm very happy to announce that Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, who represent the ready-made garments and clothing sector of Bangladesh, which contributes to about 84% of foreign exchange earning of the country and provides employment to almost 3 million workers, majority of them who are women. We were the first association in Bangladesh to come out with our SDG report. We actually went in and we analyzed 50 companies in certain categories, and we had compiled a report, we had published it. So it's very, very important that businesses remain engaged until 2030. And because of the new challenges that we heard from the beginning of this webinar, the COVID scenario, and that has pushed us back a little bit in terms of how we were progressing. It's even more important for business to remain engaged more than ever.
Right.
So that's where I come in, and the business community comes in. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Omar, could you please provide your point of view?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ranama. And first of all, thank you for this opportunity to be with the eminent speakers from Bangladesh, and really an honor to be here. I think, like, as a conscious citizen, I'm already involved from a citizen's perspective to contribute in the SDG, how well I'm actually keeping up with that. But from a professional capacity, what I'm directly involved with is SDG 13, which is climate action. And the work that we are currently doing is in collaboration with other UN agencies as well in how in the area of like data and how forecasting can help taking better decisions. So improving the forecasting, improving, making sense of financing ahead of the disasters and climate risk. So we're working on this area with governments in the Middle East, North Africa region. So governments is a big part of kind of mainstreaming these things. And apart from that, another SDG that I'm currently involved is SDG 2, which is zero hunger.
And Omar, just I wanted to add, like you are in the African MENA region. Could you explain what the MENA regions, which countries you are focusing on?
So MENA is basically Middle East, North Africa. So it's a region, like different organizations divide their regions based on their operational priority, also their strategic relevance. So the organization that I work for, they work with MENA. It used to include Central Eastern Asia, but not anymore. So it's basically kind of starting from Tunisia, Algeria, that side to Iran. And we also have in the North Africa side, I'm based in Cairo, so Egypt is there. And we used to have Sudan, but not anymore. That went to Eritrea. So a couple of North African countries like Morocco, Algeria, they're also included. Yes.
Okay.
But Gulf is a very, very important part of this region.
Right, definitely. Thank you so much. I will move to the next question. As we can see that during this pandemic, a lot of our projection, our work has slowed down. But despite all these things, they have forecasted that Denmark and Germany, if they keep this momentum going, that they are the only two countries who are going to reach the 2030 SDG goals. And it's not just one or two goals, but all the 17 goals. But my question to all of you, like, what are the challenges you think we are facing now to get on back track to achieve the SDGs related to your areas of specialism? And I can start with Dr. Nazneen, the challenges.
Thank you, Dr. Rehnuma. I think if just we take one sentence, what we need to do is to recover from COVID. So whatever is affected by COVID, and as you mentioned earlier, that these are interrelated. It's not like one area and it's just separate from everything else. For example, during COVID, we have seen new poor. Those who were very vulnerable, those who were close to the poverty line. So they have just within a few months, they have gone down the poverty line, and maybe they're now coming back. They're coming back when the economic activities have, it's not normal, but it's taking place. It's no longer the lockdown time in Bangladesh. But you see, still we see during COVID, it revealed to us that we should not only look at the poverty line and the people below poverty line. So there are a lot of people who are above poverty line, but very vulnerable. So I think if you think of one big challenge is this people who are vulnerable, who move up and down the poverty line. So this is a big challenge. So not only to look at the poverty line, but their vulnerability. During this COVID, I think Asif Bhai will elaborate more on that. We have seen how different industrial sector could not really perform normally. And that has created unemployment. It's both manufacturing and the service sector. And we have seen reverse migration from urban to the rural area, because many people could not maintain their livelihood in the urban areas, and then going back to the rural economy. We have to see how that is. It's not always good that they are going back to the rural economy, because they have to find the livelihood, and that may have impacts on the rural wage employment situation, their livelihoods and everything. So that is a big challenge, because this is changing and not all of them are coming back, because we are still not in a normal situation. And during COVID, there are lots of industries, especially for the micro and small industries. Many of them could not really survive the lockdown situation. So they had to just close down, or they are in such a situation that they cannot maintain the employment they used to have. So I think I can go on with the list, like the education. Still in Bangladesh, all the educational institutions are closed. They are supposed to open next week, but for over a year, students are not attending attending educational institutions. We have online education, but as you can imagine, those who are in the rural area, those who are in the poor families, they cannot avail this facility. And in many rural areas, the internet connection, the speed is not at par, and also those schools do not have the capacity of the teachers to give online education, and and that has impacted on other social issues, like during the COVID, the child marriage has gone up. So many girls from poor families, they are married off because the parents, they don't have education, and the parents, that their poverty situation, income situation has gone down. So they're just marrying their girl child off. And this is, have an impact on the nutrition, the risk of these girls becoming a mother at a very early age, and all those consequent changes and impacts. So I think, if you want me to say what are the big challenges towards attending SDG goals at this moment, is to recover from the COVID impacts as soon as possible. And because of that, the UNDP's next 4 years agenda, which has just actually passed today, the country development program, that has one of the two key areas that UNDP is going to concentrate with all its activities, is to recovery of COVID. So, and also we have to bear in mind just one point, that when we are talking about SDG achievement for Bangladesh, another critical issue is that we are graduating from a least developed country. So we are graduating out of the list of the least developed countries, and that actually many of the indicators of graduating out of the least developed countries and sustain there, actually that is same with the SDG goals. So income, human resource, human asset, and vulnerability. So I think that is also a challenge, that how smoothly we can handle this graduation process, and how much we take preparation beyond graduation, because that is very important, especially for our business community. I stop here.
Yeah, and you are so right. It's like a domino effect. Like just one thing happened, and you can see it's impacting the family structure, the education, the health, nutrition. So that is why we have to understand that it is all integrated, and that's why I think all the sectors should work together. Mr. Asif Ibrahim, what are the challenges that you have seen in your sector?
Let me just start off with saying that before the pandemic hit, our GDP was about 8.1%, and it was adjusted to 5.1% in the budget, anticipating the challenges that COVID was going to face. And what had really helped the business community in Bangladesh in the beginning was the government was very proactive in announcing the stimulus packages for large industries, for medium industries, and for small industries. Separate stimulus package was announced for the ready-made garments and textile industries, which actually helped to pay the wages of the workers for the first 4 months for this particular industry. But however, we saw that because of the, you can say, the lack of database that's there for the small and marginalized businesses, they are the ones who had actually suffered the most, not necessarily the large and medium industries. Those industries did not have the proper access to finance. They didn't have perhaps access to proper banking channels. So in that particular perspective, we depended a lot on the microfinance institutions that operate across Bangladesh. You have heard about different, the non-governmental actors who have played a very significant role. People like PRAC, people like Grameen, and also others those who give loans to small businesses. So they had also come in, and they tried to help out. But unfortunately, the SME sector and the service sector, as Dr. Nazneen mentioned, small businesses, small restaurants, small transportation service providers, and many others, they have actually suffered a lot. So until and unless the pandemic ends, we really cannot forecast how we will get back on track in terms of the SDGs as it is financing had been a big problem from the very beginning. And for developing countries in the region, for example, in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and others, it's going to be a massive challenge. But let us hope that some of the initiatives that were there in the past, we can perhaps continue to do so and remain engaged and do our part. At most, the best we can do is that we can help by providing, try to get more revenue generated and pay taxes. But I don't think that's going to be sufficient enough. There has to be some sort of first condition is pandemic has to end, and second is that the stimuluses that has been announced by the government before, if the government can afford it, maybe they need to continue until things come back to normal.
Right. And you're so right that we have to create those new opportunities also. So sometimes problems can create opportunities, and this kind of dialogues can show us like how we can accelerate and what are the things that we need to do, which we were not paying attention before. Omar, I'm coming to you. Like in your field, what are the challenges are you experiencing in your region?
Sure, I'll just go back before COVID a little bit, which I think we have been dealing with constant challenge of meeting the basic needs for a larger population in the world and the region. And that challenge still remains the same, right? We are also in an idea that the pandemic probably be over, but we exactly don't know whether there's another one waiting or not, because I was involved in a research in 2013, which is how the climate impact, the changes in temperature is kind of gonna evolve in some sort of unknown novel viruses. So keeping this in mind, I think the challenging is how the resources were allocated for certain priorities and how it has changed. And that is probably gonna have a different effect on the humanitarian sector, the ODA, like overseas development aid status, although they are committed, but the priorities will be more kind of introvert, how the welfare countries probably will think differently now. And it will have a kind of a different sort of new challenges in the sector that I work in. Also, if you look at the demography, I think 10 years back, how people were being affected has changed. In Asia, the median age is about 30, 32, something like that. Right. In Africa, it's less. Farmers, next generation is not becoming farmers, for example. So that's also are having different sort of priority, changes in priority. And particularly in the region that I work in, one of the big challenges, the poor political decisions to get the conflicts. I was in Yemen 2 weeks back. They're still part of Yemen in like a famine. And what can we do about it? When you go to the field, I think for our sector, the main effect was we could not reach on time. But when you go to the field, the poor people has been struggling with the basic needs. So COVID is kind of is there, but also not there. So that has also been the reality.
Thank you, Omar. And I think this another important point that you have pointed out is the political will. Like does the government also have the appetite to help and solve these problems immediately? So those are the things also we need to consider when we are talking about climate and food. My next question to Dr. Nazneen would be, as a UN development agency, UNDP has been playing a very important role helping the UN nations implement these SDG goals through integrated solutions, bringing different stakeholders to the table. Can you share some of the success stories in the areas of achieving SDGs through your integrated solutions, and how you are collaborating with private sectors or the government agencies in this process?
I think I can give like a list of activities you're currently doing, because that is the main, goal of our activities UNDP is doing. The main target is always to link it with the SDG achievement, SDG goals. So we are involved with the government, partnering with government on wide activities. So if I mention some of them that is unique than other organizational activities, that is our activities in the some more vulnerable areas like the Chittagong Hill Tracts districts that UNDP is working there. I mean, you know, because of the hilly areas and everything, it's very, and also different political and other the situation, it's difficult to work in that area. So UNDP's involvement there to improve their infrastructure, their economic conditions, they're all targeted towards the climate change issues, all targeted towards SDG achievement. So I would say that the activities that UNDP is involved in the Chittagong Hill Tracts area is one of its core contribution. I mean, contribution is everywhere, I have to say, but this is a very important, unique contribution because not many are working in that area. So, and also, you know, UNDP has played a very important role in terms of supporting people who are vulnerable in terms of poverty, looking at the gender issues, maintaining equality. And during this pandemic, actually, UNDP worked a lot on improving the judiciary and others, so facilitating the process. And you know that in Bangladesh, the whole digitization process, which is very important in terms of SDG monitoring, in terms of data. This project called A2I, A2I project is mostly supported with other development partners, obviously, but UNDP is the main supporter of A2I activities in Bangladesh. And that has been working on different areas, creating data transparency, bringing efficiency in the service delivery system. And also one unique thing that UNDP did during COVID is to help the judiciary to resolve the, to create a platform, to create an online platform to resolve those cases that are not that big, but then people who are, you know, in the prison for 2-3 days without, just they're waiting for the bail. So UNDP has created an online platform so that those persons can get bail online. Especially that works very well during the lockdown when the courts were all closed. And for small little things, people were waiting for bail. So this online platform, and this is now continuing, and UNDP is supporting its expansion to other districts and not only to Dhaka and other districts. So this is, I think, at the important achievement that we have. UNDP is working a lot with the youths because when we are moving towards SDG achievement, those who will be actually take action beyond 2030 will be the youths of today. So UNDP has been actively involved in capacity building and working with the youth, even including their mental health and skill development. So in that way, UNDP is closely involved. UNDP has a dedicated, apart from all the activities they are doing targeted towards SDG development, UNDP has dedicated project to support, it's for SC for SDG project that is directly working with the government regarding different goals. Just as this moment under that project, UNDP is providing capacity building training to the government officials on the data generation and data processing mechanisms that those are related to SDG goals. At this moment, so they are dealing with data regarded SDG 14, but I mean there are different capacity building training for the government officials so that they can be they can be active agent of achieving the SDG goals. So our activities and also with all those green growth, we are supporting a lot on green growth in Bangladesh, which is kind of will support the SDG achievement in terms of climate change and others. We also and within UNDP we have now an unit called Accelerator Lab. It's a laboratory of knowledge generation, and this Accelerator Lab works with Accelerator Labs within the whole UNDP system in different countries so that we can share our knowledge from one country to the other so that we can resolve different problems. So for the time being, also we are from the Accelerator Lab, which actually I am leading, we are working a lot on blue economy to see the potentials of blue economy and finding solutions. We are working on multidimensional poverty, how we can solve multidimensional poverty. So I think I can go on with all the
amazing.
Many things we are doing, and also UNDP has been very active in strengthening as I said, the judicial case management, and also I don't know whether you have heard about this village court that was a very unique project of UNDP, and now it's continuing, and this is an alternate dispute resolution and redressal mechanism for especially for the disadvantaged group. So even to give people the legal rights, the poor and disadvantaged people, we have different programs. So in that way, I think starting from SDG first goal, whatever we are doing, our main goal is to is not to leave anyone behind.
And this is so fascinating, Dr. Nazneen, because in 2019 I saw this a social progress report of SDGs, where Bangladesh was behind in 4 goals, and justice, peace and justice was one area of human personal rights. And I think this initiative of court system, digitalized court system, can move us back on track, guaranteeing some of those
and also if I may just add one line, that we are actively working with the National Human Rights Commission to fulfill its mandate. So we have a project to just work with them so that we can work for improvement of the human rights situation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And Mr. Asif Ibrahim, my question to you, like in 2015, many of the global private companies like Nestle, Chevron, they all got on board and to achieve the SDGs on time, and with a promise to check their negative externalities that is happening through CSR support. As you are a member of the UNESCAP, can you share some steps or measures that the businesses are taking to address and integrate into the framework of SDG?
There has been many efforts. First of all, since I'm also representing the capital market, start off by telling you about the bonds. Especially, there has been a growing trend in the green, social, and sustainability bonds, which is GSS bond market, and this actually remained unchanged even during the coronavirus pandemic. However, very recently we started to see some changes in the market. As of today, these bonds have accounted for almost 80% of the global GSS bond markets, and social bonds rapidly grew to almost 30% of the total. Even there has been extreme volatility. The sustainable investment market has been growing, and we can see the capital flows coming into these kind of initiatives. The global effort to fight the pandemic and the climate change also gives these businesses some encouragement, I hope, to accelerate these momentums in these kind of instruments. The UNCTAD makes an estimate that the value of these sustainability themed investment products in the global capital markets amounted to about $3.2 trillion US in the year 2020, which is up more than 80% from the previous year of 2019. These products include sustainable funds, which are over 1.7 trillion. The green bonds account to over 1 trillion. Social bonds account to over 212 billion. And mixed sustainability bonds is about $218 billion. Most of these bonds are domiciled in developed countries and are targeted at assets in developed markets, but we need these kind of initiatives also in the developing economies, where not necessarily the markets are mature enough from frontier markets to emerging markets. So those are the challenges that we have. So you mentioned names of the companies. Those are the big multinational companies. These multinational companies must play a much engaging and a stronger role to recover, first of all, during the recovery phase of this coronavirus pandemic. That could be through the CSR pledges, or that could be through their SDG commitments that they had made through their association and engagement with different international platforms, like the Global Compact I had mentioned. UNDP also have started engaging with the private sector very recently. And many projects has been taken in together to address the issues of environment in Bangladesh. So the clean green brick project is one of the good examples. So not just UNDP, with UNICEF, with other international agencies, with development partners, if we can all come together and these big multinationals play their due role, I think we can have something, see some light at the end of the tunnel. So that's something that we need to be looking into the future.
Yeah, and I think it's great to see how businesses are acknowledging now that without the right market, without the population, educated population, healthy population, there is no market for business. So we have to do business in a different way to create that ideal world. So Omer, because you are the climate specialist in this forum, what are your observations of how businesses and other organizations are involved tackling these issues of SDGs focused on climate and poverty and food hunger in this field? Have you seen the involvement, or through your organization, are you taking some steps to bring them into that flow?
Thank you. I mean, it's a very vast area, the climate action. So everybody's involved, and it's really like hard to generalize how to do it. But if you look at the main targets and everything, we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions, and that kind of comes back directly to how we are actually warming up the global. And I would like to, I think the ways of thinking around this is changing, because we're already in the crisis. Right. So it's actually forcing us to work together. And that's why this M4P or bottom of the pyramid, these things are more coming in. So a small example, after one of the cyclones in Bangladesh, I was going to the main field, and before humanitarians, the tobacco company and the beverage company was there, because it's their market, and the telecom company. So basically we're working with the same people, and we just need to make the connection. And there comes the responsibility. So although I have a thesis on CSR, but I kind of want to get away from CSR right now. It's not a corporate social responsibility. It's an inclusive business that we need to really think about. As you just rightly pointed out, if we don't know our clients as a business profit line, so those are we'll lose our profit. And I think more and more these companies are coming together. The Global Compact was created in 1998 or 99 with the same thing, but I think the private sectors are facing problem in terms of the number of alert has raised in shipping industry, because that is kind of causing a delay in delivery, and those are bigger cost. The insurance cost and reinsurance cost is increasing. So why it is increasing? Is it because of navigation? Is it how we are actually learning how weather is behaving in different season? And it's also the commodity. Most of the food related issues are import based and the trade based. So how trades are affected. If the seasonality is a factor in production, seasonality is also a factor in transportation, and that actually impacts in the bigger one. So it's a complex thing that we need to really, it's kind of forcing, I think, in the region and us to work together. So you will see that most of the global climate finance, one of the goal is increasing climate finance, right? So if you look at the GCF call, if you look at adaptation fund call, they're asking questions. So how do you think it's related to the supply chain value chain? How do you think that your work will actually tag into the private sector engagement? Here, the private sector is not the companies, the big companies only, but the total supply chain and the value chain. That where the transporter, who is also vulnerable, the packaging people, they are also vulnerable. How we can engage, I think one of the concepts which is changing, that the people that we work for not everybody can be an entrepreneur, but they need to have a monthly income wage that increases the choice. So how we are increasing choice by linking them with the economic growth, not aid. Aid is not a solution, it's a transition. So I think those sort of things are coming more and more. And it's actually, to be honest, like as I said, like we're already in the crisis. So
Right.
May I supplement, Omar, because I chair the task force on disaster and climate risk reduction, and the private sector has been, we have been trying to engage the private sector, particularly in the disaster risk post-recovery area, and we were quite successful after the Nepal earthquake, where the Chaudhry group, the Chaudhry Foundation of Nepal actually were quite instrumental, and they came forward and helped the Nepalese government during the recovery period. And we are also engaged in several projects through our ESCAP engagement. We are engaged with the shipping companies globally. Omar mentioned about the delay, which is a very recent phenomenon after the Suez Canal that was blocked for a week. So that has really, created a backlog of shipping across the world,
Right.
and the prices have gone up. So it's a big challenge. But going back to what I was saying, we have engaged with the shipping companies to have monitoring of the tsunami waves in the oceans in the commercial shipping vehicles. We are setting up small instruments there. They have decided to host it in the ships. So with those, we are being able to monitor better the potential of tsunami waves through these kind of projects. So those kind of initiatives are there, but they need to be scaled up more. They are not sufficient enough. Look just what happened to New York City. We've never seen such an incident in the history of New York City.
Exactly.
So more and more these kind of events will take place, and more there's going to be need for governments engagement with the development partners and with the private sector to come forward and address these issues, because it's going to be enormous. Let me tell you that.
Exactly.
Can I just cut in here, because we've got a question actually very relevant to what you just said, Asif. It's coming in from Vienna, and basically, I mean, we all know that the private sector is going to play a fundamental role in achieving these goals. Some people say that corporates aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals has become a form of green or responsible washing, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. I'm just, the question is, what mechanisms are in place to minimize this occurrence?
You meant to say that just window dressing aspect of engagement of the corporate sector?
Yeah.
Well, that is okay. That is why I had mentioned in the earlier in the deliberation the responsibility that the big multinationals have to play. If the big multinationals play their corrective responsibility properly, then down the line, companies who are national, companies who can see those examples can follow up. And also here, I believe the government can also be a significant player through not regulating necessarily, but in a format of a public-private dialogue partnership, where more open discussions can take place, where the government and the private sector can set up voluntarily reporting of SDG activities of national companies. If those initiatives, I'm very happy to announce that in Bangladesh, we have started that initiative with my other hat, which is we have created a citizens platforms for SDGs Bangladesh, where we have representation from academia, from development agencies, from civil society, from the rural level non-government organizations, and also the private sector. And I, along with another business leader, represents the private sector in this initiative. So through these kind of initiatives, the accountability of the private sector can be further ensured. So it's a very relevant question, and I wouldn't disagree with what the questionnaire has said. There are companies who engage in this kind of effort, and it's shameful. It's shameful if they do so. I think we really need to wake up and save this climate of ours, and the private sector has to play a very crucial role in that.
Right.
I think if I just may add one point. Oh, sorry, Omar, just
Yeah,
before
please.
that, I think also Asif bhai, you will agree that brands and they have a big role to play, international buyers, because when we want a responsible climate or environment responsible private sector business and growth, I think it's very important that how we share our responsibilities. If everything goes down to the factories, those who are producing, and then all the burden on them, and then it will not really be working, and there we will see lots of things happening. So I think it's very important, not only from the brand side, not only put pressure that you be with this and follow this and that, but also the responsibility includes that they take part in that process financially, and also sharing the responsibility of making that happen. It's not only just instructing somebody to do something, it's the partnership that will work. It's not like top down or just following rules. So I think it's very important that brands also behave.
Very important point you have raised, Dr. Nazmi, because the lowest rung in the ladder of the supply chain are these factories, particularly those who are located in the developing economies. So the international retailers, international brands who source, using these, the cheaper, you say, the labor component, and take advantage of these to scale up their profits, they have to play their role also here properly.
Right. And I think we can make the companies more resilient, competitive, taking this new angle of being conscious about our climate, about our people. And many organizations are already finding that it's more revenue generating if you have another kind of strategies built in, focusing on these SDGs. So these are some new areas of market also can open up nowadays. We are pressed for time, so I will ask another question to Dr. Nazneen, and it is a spin-off from what Omar was mentioning, that aid is not a solution, a condition. So as we can see that during this pandemic, and also because our country is also moving to another level, we are going to be a developing country soon. Foreign aid and assistance are going to go down. So do you think that slowing down of foreign aid could impact us negatively, our country, in this process of going towards achieving the SDG goals on time?
You see, one thing is actually we are graduating out of LDC list. I mean, we are a developing country, but we were in the LDC list and we are graduating out. But before that, Bangladesh is already a lower middle income country. So we are no longer actually, we already have more of loan than aid. So Bangladesh has already has moved towards more loan than aid. So also the interest rate is higher than that Bangladesh used to face before we became lower middle income country. So yeah, you are right that it will be more stringent when we graduate out of LDC, and this is one of the areas where we need to work. But I think what we need more is not asking for aid, rather more of partnership that is important. And Asif bhai mentioned a very important point that these days development partners are not only working with the government, but increasingly with the private sector, because it's very important. Previously, it was like they were called donors. They will give money and things will be done. But now they are development partners, and in many cases, the money actually comes from the government or from the private sector, and development partners are actually implementing programs with that money. So it's like partnership. I think in future, it's more important how we build partnership within the country, among private sector, government, development partners, and how we build our partnership with our international counterparts. And in that sense, for Bangladesh, it's very important that we improve our negotiation skills. It's very important in terms of business negotiation, trade negotiation, climate negotiation, finance negotiation. It's not only skills among government officials, also skills among private sector, so that they can be in the active part. They can play an active role when government is negotiating with its counterpart. So it's known, I think, in the post LDC life, to achieve SDG goal, as well as to achieve our country's goal to be a rich country, developed country, it's very important that we, the private sector, government and development partners, and the international community works together with good partnership. And as at this moment, actually, UNDP is working towards a program, having a program where we can support building the negotiation skills, but it is very important to work together with the private sector. So I think aid, reduction of aid is not a problem. More is the challenge is towards an effective and efficient partnership.
That's correct. Romal, do we have any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, there's one actually. It's basically focused on Africa. So we've all heard about the vaccine inequity gap with Africa. People are saying that by the end of 2021, only 20% of the continent will be vaccinated. So the question is, what are the implications for the rest of the world if a huge continent like Africa is fundamentally unvaccinated? So what are the implications in general, and what will be those implications on the Sustainable Development Goal achievement? Perhaps Omar could.
Omar, would you like to take a stab in it?
Sure. I'm not an expert on these things, but what we hear from WHO colleagues and everything, of course, there's an inequity and there is a challenge posing in that. But I think this is something like we need to accept. That how quickly the private sector comes in, how quickly the other mechanism comes in. Financing will be a big challenge actually, because so far it has been like kind of subsidized. So now thinking of like how it can be like marketed, like how you can pay and get vaccines as well. But I'm not sure about the plan and rollout. Africa is too big. It has 53, 54 countries, different subregions, different interests. There's francophone interests. There are different bilateral situation. There's an African Development Bank, there's Islamic Development Bank. So a lot of actors and a lot of deals are made, but I think we don't know the data. I mean, when we say 20% and everything, one of the challenges, like we kind of, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, what this 20% is, because we also don't know what is happening at the local level. What is the, I mean, this is a public health disaster, probably we'll find a lot of things after 5-10 years that what actually happened, why the slum people did not die, which was projected. So we are yet to see that. But I would like to, if you allow me the 15-20 seconds on the previous question on aid, because I used to work with the ODA. I think one of the challenges specific to Bangladesh is, I think government and the private sector or development actors need to think that the reduction of aid is also reducing the space for CSOs, civil society organizations. But Bangladesh is a country with NGOs, thousands of NGOs who has built capacity. And of course, government will work, but how we can really use this skill, working with the government when this order will not be there. So that should be one area that we should work together for Bangladesh specifically.
Right. We are coming to the end, but I'm going to take few minutes extra, asking the last question to all of you. Because I am a president of a youth development organization focused on youth development, what are your advice to youth who are watching today on how they can be a part of this SDG towards accelerating towards this SDG goal, or this whole process? So can each one of you, starting from Mr. Ibrahim, could give us some advice how youth can be involved in this process?
50% of the population of the world are actually under 30 years of age, and they have to play the most important role for the future of the planet. sustainability of the planet, all the challenges that we face now. UNICEF has a very unique model, the 3A approach, which is raising awareness, taking action, and holding decision makers accountable for progress, which is SDG 16, if I say so. So I think it has to come from there. We are already seeing many youths rising up. Greta Thunberg has created a sensation, and there will be many more like her that we actually need in the global arena to come and fight for the causes that exist, particularly keeping the spirit of the SDGs in forefront. We have to be able to reduce inequalities, and private sector government, it's the responsibility of everybody, and I believe that the youth will play a very crucial role in that regard.
Thank you. And I think the startup industry in Bangladesh, that is driven by the young youth of today. So if they are aware of this SDGs, which I believe we should start addressing in the university curriculum as well. So they are aware, and when they start the businesses, they are focusing on those areas in their strategies and the revenue building model. Dr. Nazreen, few words?
I think from the UNDP's perspective, that what we are looking at when we are looking at the potential of youths, we, as I have already mentioned, that recently we have actually increased our activities with the youths, especially in line with achieving SDGs, in terms of involving them in different activities. For example, different awareness raising programs on social issues. We are engaging the youth so that they are part of the process, even starting from the during this COVID, starting from the campaign of masking to distributing different aids towards poor people, working for wastage management, and in all those programs we have a window where we are engaging youths, and especially women also. Recently we are in progress of having a memorandum of understanding with the Scouts in Bangladesh, and you know, Scouts and Rovers, they include mostly a huge number of youths, and we are working with them on different development agenda, different goals. So we will engage them on different activities in terms of their capacity building, in terms of working for people, so that they develop a habit of having this idea of leaving no one behind. So that's how I think it's very important to work with the youths. It's important to give them skills, it's important to give them education and other opportunities, but at the same time it's important to create opportunities where youths can take part in different social activities, so that they own the SDG, and that's why I think it's important that we also work at the local levels, not only from the center to the locals. It's very important that we take different programs in the local level, so that the youths in the rural area, in the disadvantaged area, they are also part of the whole process. And from UNDP, it's a very important focus of our next 4 years program to work with the youths, to involve youths in different programs.
Thank you, everybody, for such insightful discussion. I wish we had more time to go through all those amazing insights and your shared knowledge. But as Einstein said, one of the things that I have found out, that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used to when we created them. So you all are in playing a huge part in creating new solutions. So thank you so much. And definitely this is just the beginning of our discussion. And I would like to ask Nicholas to conclude the session, because Nicholas is playing also a big role starting a new program, Development 2030. So Nicholas, I would like to give you the floor to talk a little bit about the Development 2030 and how it is related to the SDGs.
Thank you, Ranuma. Can I just say that I think we've just had a really interesting discussion. It's a great opportunity when we have these webinars to bring people together from distance, to get people together in different time zones, and also the participation of our audience, the people that joined this discussion. I think it's been great. We all agree that the 2030 agenda is very important and, to my view, requires much greater partnering. I'm talking about partnering between governments, business, the UN agencies, the NGOs, consultants, everybody. But to date, most of that partnering has been transactional, which is not the right approach. What we need is a much more long-term approach. And the objective with Development 2030 is to provide a platform to bring all those parties together, to sow the seeds in those discussions, to facilitate meetings and hopefully outcomes. We all spend a lot of time talking, but what everybody wants is outcomes. Development 2030 is going ahead in Brussels alongside ADEX on November the 17th and 18th. And I hope that many of you will be able to join us and witness this new event. Can I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, Ranuma, but I just wanted to thank the moderator, thank you as moderator for doing such a splendid job, and also to thank our panelists, to thank Ramel for facilitating this webinar, to thank Holly behind the scenes for making sure that the technology worked, and also to thank all of you as participants for joining us today. So big thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.